Dave Corinth here. Welcome to my shop. I recently posted a video titled, I have too many tools. And what I really meant by that was I have too many tools without a place to put them. So I've been building a new till. And I'm going to show you the progress I made on that till today. But it's not here, it's over there because it won't fit on this workbench. It's too big. It's 4 foot tall and 8 foot wide. It's a monster, considerably bigger than the one behind me, but it will hold a lot more tools. And I'm not going to get rid of that one. I'm actually going to keep both of them, but I'll have two tills and plenty of room to put all the tools I've got now, as well as tools in the future, which I'm pretty sure I'm going to buy more tools. For today's video, I want to show you the progress I've made on making this till. So let's get started. Like I said earlier, this till is big, 48 inches tall and 96 inches wide. And typically it's going to be laying on its back because I don't want it to fall over. I started this project off by planing down some rough sawn cottonwood that I had down to 13/16 of an inch. Using my old Delta portable planer. I've had this thing for many years and it's still trucking along. Now you might be asking yourself, why did this knucklehead decide to use cottonwood? Cottonwood's awful. I wouldn't even call it a secondary wood. It's more like a tertiary wood. It's mostly used for shipping crates and pallets. It grows real fast along swampy areas. It's ugly. It gets wormholes in it. It rots fast. It splits easy. But during the pandemic, I bought 1,000 board feet of it for 10 cents a board foot, and I have a lot of it. And I've used it for various projects. I've used it for drawer guides, drawer sides and backs, bottoms, all kinds of stuff. And I'm not going to use much of it on this wood except for the basic sides and the inner supports. And I'm going to stain it black, so no one's ever going to know that it's cottonwood unless you tell them or they watch this video. So I made a commitment when I started this project to use what wood I had on hand, and I had a lot of this on hand. So after I surfaced all that beautiful cottonwood, I went ahead and ripped each board down to 6 inches, and the boards that will become the perimeter will get this rabbet to accept that 4x8 sheet of plywood. Then once I cut all those on the table saw, I'm going to clean them up with my rabbet block plane. The two perimeter boards on the side will also have a rabbet, and I'm going to cut those rabbets by hand, the good old-fashioned way. Here I'm just making a notch to guide that saw blade in when I make that cross cut. And if the grain allows it, I'll take out the waste with a chisel. Sometimes the grain won't allow that and you got to cut it with a saw, but in this case the grain was running really straight. And then I'll go back to my rabbet block plane to clean that rabbet up as well. And I've decided that I'm going to use these old wood screws that I got from the piano that I took apart to fasten this whole thing together because I have a lot of those screws. But I really want it to look like I meant to do it, not like I just threw some screws in it. So I'm actually going to lay them out so they're all uniform. And then I'm going to drill some small pilot holes using my cordless drill. Now I want these screws to be all flush, so I'm going to countersink them with my brace, and I have actually a depth gauge attached to the countersink. If you've never seen one of these, they are handy, especially for stuff like this. Once it touches the wood, you know you're at the right depth. Then I'm going to use a larger diameter bit in my push drill to drill a hole the same diameter as the shank on the wood screw. And then back to the table saw to cut the dados. This is just kind of a time-saving thing. There's 18 of these dados that I'm going to have to cut, and doing them all with my 45 would take a long time. So I'm doing this just to kind of speed things up. But I don't want my hand tools to feel left out, so I'm going to grab my router plane and clean each of these dados up one at a time using my router plane. And then I want to pre-assemble everything to make sure it's all going to fit, and of course to make sure everything's cut right. And when I put the wood screws in, I'm going to make a conscious effort to see if I can get them all to clock in the same direction. At least the ones you can see. And I am going to put all these wood screws in by hand just because, one, I have the tools to do it. It's kind of fun. It is kind of a workout sometimes, but it's really enjoyable to use these old tools. And less chance of me marring up those screws if I use my cordless drill. And once I have the whole thing together, I'm going to take my jack plane and my block plane and just make sure that all the tops of these boards line up. I want everything to be nice and even to accept the face frame. Now I like to stamp each piece before I take it apart so that I know where it goes when I put it back together. There's 30 separate joints in this, and if I didn't do this, there's no way I would be able to ensure that it would go back together the way it came apart. Now, if you missed the I Have Too Many Tools video, I basically talked about how I had been saving up parts for quite some time to build a new till. And some of those parts were, of course, pieces of an old piano that I took apart. And here I'm just going through those pieces just to see where I want to put stuff. I kind of already had a general idea, but now I get to actually see it for real and just see what it's going to look like. The piano that I took apart was actually going to be burned, and I was able to save it from the burn pile before they got to lighting it. Well, actually, they tried to light it, they just weren't very good at lighting fires. And once I'm mostly satisfied with what I've got, I'm going to take this thing apart. And of course, I'm going to have to remember where each one of these screws came. At least not every hole, but at least the joints. And I'm going to have to mark them because these are not all the same size. Some are big, some are small, and I don't want to get confused. So I'm just going to tape them all together and then letter them to the joint that they correspond to. And since I have 30 joints, I have 30 sets of screws. And then, of course, I can just start taking it apart and get it ready to sand. Because I am going to stain it, I do want to sand it so that it will take the stain better. Now, like I said, I am going to stain the sides and the back of this thing. And I'm going to use this stain, which is True Black 274 from Minwax. It's an oil-based stain, and it only took one coat. I guess you could make it darker if you wanted to by applying a second coat, but one coat was more than enough for me. As you can see, it is turning that board just about black. And I want to stain the backer board, which is a 4x8 sheet of 3/4 inch plywood. So I'm going to have to apply every square inch of that with this black stain. For the finish on this till, I'm going to use wipe-on polyurethane with a warm satin finish. Now, I'm no big fan of polyurethane, especially the kind that you put on with a brush. But wipe on polyurethane looks 10 times better than the polyurethane you apply with a foam brush or a fine bristle brush. This will give it kind of that hand rubbed look, and it'll give it the durability from being beat up by tools and cleaned down, having oil on it from my tools, and I just think it's the best option for this. These pieces of mahogany will be the dividers for the shadow box center in the center of the till. And this is actually an old door. It has a cedar core with a very thick 1/4 inch mahogany veneer on either side. And it looks fantastic. The color of this stuff is just amazing. And since the stain was oil based and the finish is oil based, when I put the first coat on, it's going to take a little bit of that stain off with it and expose some of that wood grain, which is kind of the look I'm after. And this first coat will take a full 24 hours before you can apply the second. But before I apply the second, I hit each piece with some 4/0 steel wool. I'll then wipe each piece down with a tack cloth and then apply another coat. I ended up putting 4 coats of polyurethane with that 4/0 steel wool polish between. And that mahogany just kept looking better every time I put a coat on. This is after rubbing it down with that 4/0 steel wool. And when I apply the polyurethane, you can really see that color come out. And to finish it off, I used some Howard's feeding wax with some 4/0 steel wool again and buffed the whole thing down. And then I'll wipe all the pieces down with a cotton rag, just removing that excess Howard's feeding wax. And then I get to put the whole thing back together and start to see what it's going to look like. I ended up cleaning these screws and then applying a gun blue finish to them. They were pretty rusty to begin with, so they definitely needed a cleaning. But then I didn't want that shiny look, so I went ahead and applied some gun blue, and they're just about the same color as the wood. Anybody who's ever had the idea to build a wall hanging tool chest or plain till has surely seen the Studley tool chest. And here is a photo of the old legend himself, along with that famous tool chest that hangs on the wall. H.O. Studley worked for the Poole Piano Company and crafted this now famous tool chest from scrap pieces that were used to build pianos. And I've read that it took him between 20 and 30 years to complete his tool chest. It is mind-blowing to think of the organizational skills that Mr. Studley had to be able to fit 300 tools into a chest that's roughly 40 inches by 40 inches when fully opened. And while this till will be made from some scrap piano parts and it will hang on the wall, that's about the only similarities it's going to have with Mr. Studley's tool chest. And I am going to add to this chest over time and try to use every square inch of it that I can to make sure I can get the most tools in it. It just won't be on the level of Mr. Studley's chest. Once I get it all assembled, I'm going to go ahead and try to stand this thing up. But first, I want to go ahead and clamp that piece of plywood to the back because it's not attached right now. And if you're wondering, yes, it's heavy. And I'm going to have to leave it in the upright position so I can go ahead and fasten the back. And to fasten this thing, I want to make sure it's got plenty of screws. So first, I'm going to go ahead and transfer all those marks from the front to the back. And this is where you definitely want to measure twice and drill once, because I don't want to drill a hole and it not have something behind it. So I double checked all my numbers and then transferred those marks onto the back with a straight edge. Now I really tried not to use Phillips head screws on the back of this, but I just didn't have enough of those old slotted screws. So I ended up using 1 5/8" drywall screws, and there was 99 of them. So now that I have it put together, let's see what it's going to look like with some of these parts. The first part is, of course, the large center section, or shadow box section as I call it. And it will have this piece of crown on top. And for the drawers, I'm going to use these pieces of veneered mahogany. And for these lower pockets on the right and left side, I want to have, of course, those carved panels that will be sliding doors, one on each side. And above that, I want to put this beautiful piece of trim on top, solid mahogany, something along those lines, one for each side. And then for the face frame, I'm going to use walnut. One across the top, like so. And then one above the shadow box on each side. So now let's discuss each section one at a time. So for the shadow box, I want to put braces and my push drills and my egg beaters in the middle, and then the bits on one side or the other. And probably going to put chisels over here or over there. Don't really know yet. Haven't made up my mind. And right below that, of course, will be these drawers. And they will have dovetails. And then for the drawer pulls, I'm going to use old Stanley, no longer usable brass adjuster knobs with the threaded rod showing through. Something like that. I can't let it stand up now because I have this tilted back. But that's kind of what it will look like. And I've got Michael Jinks sending me 4 more of these. This one, the brass adjustment knob, there's too much play in here. I mean, it's got an absolute mountain of play in there. And then the threaded rod is pitted right where in the center where the adjustment nut threads in. So for this thing is on here so tight, I mean, you can't even get it out. So this one was no longer usable, and it is perfect to make a drawer pull. And right above the drawers, there's actually a pocket here. If I lift this up, you can see this pocket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this and install a piano hinge, because guess what this piano came with? 2 piano hinges. So I'm going to install one either probably on the bottom so it folds down. Not real sure yet, but I'm going to put a piano hinge. That way I can have access to this long tray, and I can put winding sticks or straight edges or something like that inside of here and have easy access to it. On the lower right side pocket, I'm going to use this panel, and I'm going to make a sliding door out of it. I'm going to put a guide on the top and guide on the bottom, and it will slide to either side so you can have access over here, and then you can have access over here. And what I'm going to put in this one is my combination planes. The Stanley 45 with all of its bits over here, or irons or blades, whatever you want to call them, on this side. And above that, here's where I'm going to put planes. I honestly think I'm going to reserve this side for the transitionals, because I'm getting quite a large collection of them, but this is probably going to be transitionals. And then on the top tray, I can put some other things like some smoothing planes, things of that nature. And on the lower left side pocket, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put these sliding panels of this rope and floral design. Does it go like that, or does it go like that? I think it looks better like that. So, yeah, we're going to go with that. So that's where that's going to go. And I'm not sure what I'm going to put in here yet. I've thought about putting chisels in here. I've thought about putting some saw repair parts in here. Honestly, I don't know yet. But it is a good place to store stuff, so I come up with something. But above that, this will be the saw till. I have this monstrosity, which is part of an old piano, and it is mahogany veneered, but I think I'm going to add, of course, I'm going to cut it down a little thinner, and then I'm going to add a round over to the top, or a half round, with a diameter of 1 inch or 1 1/4 inches, and it will sit something along those lines, and that will allow the bottom of the handle to drape over this. And I think I can fit 10 or 12 saws in here, maybe more, depends on how tightly I pack them. But I got a lot of room for a lot of saws. And for the center section on the top, I don't have a clue. I would like to put this in here. This is another one of those ribbon and floral designs that came off that piano, the solid mahogany. And I would like to put it somewhere in here, but I don't know where yet. It's kind of big. It takes up a lot of space. You certainly wouldn't want to put tools unless it was in the field here on top of this. So I may not even use this. I'll use it sometime somewhere else, but may not use it on this project. Up here, I'm going to put squares. I've got a large Starrett tri-square I want to put up here. And I've got a couple framing squares I want to put in here. And I'm probably going to put some planes on this side. But I don't know yet. I haven't got that far. So I've got a lot of work to do, and I'm going to get started on that right away, because I would like to get these tools put in that till and then put up on that wall. And as soon as I get it done, I'll post the video, and then we'll go on to the last step, which is going to be fitting these tools in that till. Comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll make more. And thank you for watching. So when I started this project, I had intended to keep the original finish on all the mahogany parts. No, I'm not going to, because as you can see here, this piece has been refinished, and my gosh, is that gorgeous. This looks like a turd. It is crackling, it has that alligatoring effect, and it's real brittle and dry. I'm going to zoom in on that so you can see it better. You can see here where the finish is actually chipping off, and every time I move it, more of it comes off. So it's beyond repair. I mean, it's not worth saving. Plus, it's covering up that beautiful mahogany behind it. Some pieces have wax on them, and this is where someone put a candle on top of the piano, and it has wax buildup on it. So this piece is going to get stripped too. It is solid mahogany, but we're just going to remove the old finish and then refinish it the same way I finished the carcass. And this is what most of the mahogany pieces off of that old piano look like. They have an alligatoring effect, which I like on antiques, but this is not going to be an antique anymore. It's going to be a new piece of furniture from my shop. And I want it to all kind of match, because I'm going to be using a lot of this unfinished mahogany in the project as well, and obviously that doesn't match. But this is one of those drawer fronts that's been scraped down to expose that mahogany, and it is a lot closer in color.